name is Becky, and I'm the front person of Rose Rage. I'm from Berlin. I'm actually not from Berlin, but I'm based in Berlin for now, and I'm in California to play a couple of shows and connect with other musicians and hopefully deepen relationships with people I meet along the way. And I'm really happy that I found your collective and we're setting up a show together.
Yeah, really excited for the March 6th show. How was your experience performing at Non Plus Ultra last night?
It was extremely sick and super memorable. It was a really nice night. We set up the show with Junk Punk Collective, and so the person who runs it, Quinn, is extremely kind and sweet, and I think they did an amazing job in kind of booking bands together who are all like really sociable people, where I felt there were zero bad vibes. Everyone was very supportive. All the guitarists used one guitar strap because I didn't have one. I think the guitarist in Glossy also forgot theirs. So, like that was cute, that we had this communal guitar strap. We kind of shared.
Yeah.
Non Plus Ultra is just such a vibe. It's such an amazing venue.
Yeah.
I felt very honored to be able to play there. Yeah.
That's amazing. How would you say Non Plus Ultra compares to different DIY spots you've performed at being based in Europe?
Yeah, kind of. But I think the DIY spaces we have, they aren't as quirky and cute. You know how it has like all these like weird, funky details. Like wherever you look, there's like something cute to look at. And so I think the DIY spaces in Berlin especially are a bit more edgy. So, like if you took away all the adornment, and all the decoration from the space, it could be like one-to-one like a DIY space in Germany.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was still like cuter and quirkier, sort of, like I like how the people who set up Non Plus Ultra decorated it. It's very punkish, but also like cute and just like a space where I think every creative person feels comfortable in, sort of.
Yeah. Definitely. Being based out in Berlin, I know electronic music seems to be kind of like a lot of the main focus for underground scenes. What's it like playing punk rock music in that area and being able to like embrace that kind of community?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It makes me feel a bit vintagey sometimes because I feel the music that I play is very much based on music that came out before the 90s. And I think that in Berlin, it almost has like a vintagey touch if you play like 90s rock music or punk music. It's sort of more niche than here. So I've been to California many times. I remember seeing the OCs for $5 in San Francisco many moons ago, These days they fill up huge concert halls in Berlin. And I just feel that here people tend to go to shows more. It seems to be like the thing that people do before they do something else later on, before they maybe go clubbing or go to a house party or something. People tend to go to shows, and I feel in Berlin that's very different. I think, most people like to go clubbing, and it's sort of more niche to go to shows, like obviously there are rock lovers out there and music lovers in Berlin, but it's definitely it's happening on a different scale, I would say, I love about Berlin that we have a lot of punk houses and squads, and I think these places kind of compare the most to like underground DIY spaces here. And these places are usually like really good vibe-wise because people just really come for music and, they create a little mosh or something, and you really feel the vibe, where you feel like, oh yeah, people really came out here for the music. Whereas I feel sometimes in other venues, especially if it's bigger concerts, people can be a bit stiff in Berlin. you know, where like they don't dance so much. Like some people even cross their arms, you know, like looking at bands. And I'm like, I don't know, it's like a bit too toned down for me. You know, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I for surely feel that too. Even being out in like big cities in California, sometimes you'll get that energy at different shows.
Interesting, like at the Echo or something, right? Like if you go to a bigger venue, maybe.
Yeah,
Or,
totally.
yeah. Is it called the Echo, the Echoplex?
Yeah, yeah, on Echo Park, the Echoplex and the Echo are like 2 stories. Yeah, it's interesting to see just different communities and types of people coming together, because in a place like Echo Park, there is a lot of like artists and musicians that come to shows for the music, but then there's also a lot of people that just come to have a good time on the weekend and explore something new. So it's cool to see that kind of collision of energies, but sometimes it does lead to where people don't want to fully like let loose and dance because they might not be fully comfortable in that new environment yet.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, but then like a spot like Non Plus Ultra is like people who are in the arts community, or even people who are not, are starting to discover it and already feel it like home there, to feel that sense of community based on like how it's decorated or curated, and like the visuals too. It just becomes more of like an immersive experience, in my opinion.
It's very true. The visuals were sick in there.
Yeah, yeah, it creates that like psychedelic effect for sure. Being based out in Europe, how did you first start like getting into wanting to create your own music and just like falling in love with that DIY community?
I mean, it sounds weird, but like Kurt Cobain, I guess, you know, like being a teenager, discovering Nirvana, being like, what is this? This is so good. I feel this so much, you know?
Yeah.
And then from then on, like I kind of, I think through grunge, I discovered Kinder, where I discovered Riot Girl. And that really, you know, and Riot Girl really was a big push for me as a teenager to be like, it's so rad that women rock out. I want to be able to have a femme rock band as well and like rock out, you know, and to kind of, you know, have like this certain power of like being on stage and like owning it, you know, which I feel is still tough for a lot of women. And that's also why I'm in this band, because I want to empower other females or non-binary people, queer people, LGBTQ people who are, or BIPOCs, you know, people who are basically not like white cis men, to pick up an instrument and just do it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Because music's such a powerful instrument to be able to express like yourself and any sort of beliefs or values you hold. How has like Riot Girl, like the ethic behind Riot Girl, influenced the style of music you make?
I mean, that's a really good question. I think it influenced me, yeah, in a way that it created like this feeling of participation for me, where I like really wanted to be a part of it. I think, yeah, this is how it generally works for me with art, where it's like, if something touches me a lot, I'm like, I want to reproduce this. I want to do this too, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I'm really, like, I love reading, you know? So I became a writer because of that too, because I think I read things that really touched me and, like, changed my worldview, you know? And then I'm like, oh, I need to do that, you know? I want to, like,
Yeah.
write my own things, you know? And so I feel, it created this sense of, like, me wanting to participate in the scene or like create something for me where I can like empower, you know, other marginalized people to pick up an instrument. And I think it also helped me to, I mean, that's something that's not so much connected with Riot Girl only. I think what punk kind of brought to my life was to kind of start thinking for myself, constantly questioning the status quo, also not giving a fuck about what other people think, you know, kind of really become detached from that and be like, hey, as long as I have like good intentions for everyone around me, and I don't, you know, and I'll try to be conscious about like how I act with people in my life, I'm like I can rightfully be like, I don't give a fuck what you think if you have bad intentions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Like it was really like it kind of freed my mind in a way. It was mind blowing, like discovering like grunge and punk when I was a teen.
Yeah, of course. And those are such like formulative years too. Like, did you once you heard that music and got inspired, like how did you first like act or start participating in your local scenes?
I guess by simply going to shows. Actually, when I was 18, 19, I was really lucky because me and my friend, we met this older promoter he was a bit tired of promoting. Like he was in his 40s or 50s. And he's like, oh, I can't be bothered. And he's like, kids, do the promotion for me now. You have a voluntary job now. And we were like, what? We can book shows, you know?
Yeah.
And then he would just tell us what the budget was.
Oh,
it's like for these 3 months or something, you have like this specific budget and you can book bands. And that was literally so sick. That was so much fun, you know?
Yeah, I bet.
And
Just
like
open doors.
So, sorry?
Oh, yeah, straight opened up the door for y'all.
Exactly, it did. Like we kind of, I come from a smaller town in Western Germany, and there was this like venue which was kind of run by the city, so it was like kind of like city funded, and luckily the booker didn't feel like booking so much, so he kind of outsourced it to me and my friend and two other guys we did the booking with. And that was really cute because we actually ran the nights, and it gave me an impression of like what it is like to run a show. We had to do the doors, sell drinks, make our own posters and so on.
Yeah, definitely. Around that time, how did you book bands? Like, was this like around the time of like early 2000s, would you say? Like, how was music getting like dispersed around this time?
Exactly. It was in the early 2000s. So music magazines back then were big. We read like German music magazines, something like the NME, but like the German version or the German version of Rolling Stones. And this is how you would find out about the releases and so on.
Yeah.
And what we would do is like find either bands that were touring that we could afford or just look for bands from Germany because it was easier to book them, or like from kind of neighboring countries.
Yeah. And for those ones, did you discover like the local bands through like zines and like zine culture too?
I feel zines weren't so accessible to me when I was younger, so it was more like by going through other shows that I discovered local bands,
Yeah.
Like I would also go to shows, and this is how we would like know about local bands.
Yeah, it would just be more like other people setting up their own events and just like that DIY community.
Exactly.
That's awesome. From that like starting point, then when did you get into creating music as Rose Rage?
So when I was younger, I kind of wrote songs as a singer-songwriter, but I realized that I wanted to play like in a more punkish or like noisier context because I feel that this is what I always felt the most, that gave me the most when I saw it live.
Yeah.
And so I basically, like, I still write quiet songs, have like little demos on my phone or something, but I wouldn't usually like release them or really record them properly. And before starting Rose Rage, I was in another femme punk band. We were called Cockblock. We actually had the better name, I think. And so, this is where I kind of like started feeling really sure of like what I was doing was the right thing. Like it really empowered me to be in that band, like, and to, write songs with my friend back then.
Yeah.
And then at some point, they actually moved to another city and said I could still continue the project. But it was really heartbreaking because I really liked being in a band with them. And then I figured it might be better for me to write my own kind of set list and then always look for different people. So Rose Rage is kind of like my solo project that works as a live band when we play live.
Yeah, that's great. Have you been able to, I know you released your first EP back in 2019 on Bandcamp. Around that era, did you start playing shows locally in Germany, just with like musicians that you met around the scene?
Exactly. So we played actually one show in 2019 in December, and we
Nice.
were booked for some shows in March and April, I think, but then they never happened due to the pandemic.
Yeah.
And we were put on a break for a while because back then I was playing with a drummer who wasn't so comfortable playing live, so we didn't play for a while.
Okay. Yeah. And how was that experience from creating that EP?
The first EP in 2019.
Yeah.
So we recorded it with my drum teacher, who has like a professional studio set up in his basement.
Nice.
And yeah, he's the sweetest guy. He's like this British man who has been playing drums for like ever. And I basically recorded the drums on it and guitar. And then my bass player back then recorded the bass. And it was a really empowering like feeling to be able to, you know, not just record one instrument, but like to be able to play the drums as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah,
Being able to layer it track by track and then hear it back.
exactly. And also to have like, I think that's the next step for me, that I would love to do mixes for myself, because I feel very often when you record something and you don't have like 3 albums out so people can listen to them and be like, oh, this is gonna, we want it to sound like this and that. It's like always a lot of work, like in the post-production, to then sit down with people and be like, we need to turn the bass up. We need to get like the kind of reverb out of the voice, you know? I like really dry vocals. And like to then like get a mix that I'm happy with, I feel often is like more time and money intensive. So I think it would be good for the future to do my own mixes and then send them to a mastering artist. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel that nowadays too, with like the access to recording technology and just different software. It makes it, gives you the power as an artist to mix a lot easier and more affordably nowadays.
Yeah, you seem very technically skilled. Is that what you do as well? I know I'm not supposed to ask you questions, but it's hard not to.
Yeah. Personally, like I like to make lo-fi music, so it kind of already has that like raw, like DIY quality to it, because I started out recording in like punk bands in high school, and at that time it's just really rough, like hardcore punk, and we didn't know anything about mixing and mastering, so it was just like a couple takes, it's good to go. We'll mix the vocals a little bit, but then when I started making my own solo music, it took me a long time to really figure it out and start to like mix it to where it sounds cool to me. But then I would like put it on a phone speaker or a car speaker, and it would be like the levels are all messed up. So I still send my songs out to get mastered and sometimes mixed by other people too.
Okay, so it's like 50-50, I would say. Like partially you do it yourself,
Yeah.
and partially you kind of have people you like to collaborate with.
Yeah, definitely. Because there is something about being able to mix yourself, and you'll like hear a certain layer or a frequency that you really like, or a part of your vocals that you really like, and it stands out to you, and then you send it over to your friend to get mixed or something, and yeah, maybe that part might disappear because it gets polished a bit, or just something gets altered so it doesn't sound like your initial mix.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, how would you say the quality or your experience recording was like from that first EP to your release, Rock Creep and Madhouse?
Okay, so actually I like the first release better. I had a lot of issues with the second release because I basically worked with this person who said, "Hey, I'm gonna record like Madhouse for free. Like I'm gonna do it for free for you." And then it took them ages, first of all, to mix the song, and then I wasn't happy with the mix, as in like it was like mixed in a way that was really messy. So then I had to find someone else to help me get that mix done. And that's when I had the realization of like, okay, this is not how I want to work in the future. I need to like really learn how to mix myself to have more control and like more, I don't know, like more influence on like how this will develop eventually.
Yeah.
And yeah, Rock Creep was relatively easy. We did that in a studio. That's actually, I don't play the drums there. So on Madhouse, I recorded every instrument. But on Rock Creep, I recorded it with my drummer. So that was really easy because I just played the bass. You know, he played the drums, and we were kind of like done in like an hour or something.
Nice.
But yeah, it's definitely more work when you record every instrument.
Yeah.
But it was like a good experience as well, a good learning experience.
For sure.
Yeah, and yeah, at the moment I'm actually writing on my debut album. I hope I can record it this summer.
That's amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to experiment with mixing yourself then too.
I would love that, actually, yeah.
Nice. Because I know too with your last project, the little EP with those 2 singles, you put a lot of like effort and thought into the artwork behind it and the concepts behind each song to be able to release it physically too. How was that whole experience being able to like shoot the music video for Madhouse and just like writing those kind of like socially charged songs?
Yeah, so yeah, the music video production was a lot of work because, you know, since as much as I love being like a DIY artist and doing most of the things myself, you know, to actually have a film production that one prepares alone, that was a bit too much. You know, I was kind of losing it a bit before the shooting day, you know, because I had so many things to prepare. It was tough finding other actors, especially on a very low budget, you know. There's this Facebook group called Swap Your Skills for girls only in Berlin.
Yeah.
And this is how I found people, like the psychologist, for example, you know, like I'm like, hey, I can do all these things. Like, what can we swap skills, please? You know, because I literally didn't have a budget. You know, I shot it without a funding. So I invested maybe about 400 or 500 euros into the music video. And that's why it's not like the best product, but it was such a good learning experience as well.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes I kind of do things where I'm like not sure if I can do them only to prove myself that I can do them.
Yeah.
Sort of. Maybe you know that feeling where it's like,
yeah.
I have no idea how to do this, but we're gonna get this done. You know?
Yeah. It's a learn by doing experience.
Exactly. I agree. Yeah, it was like lots of fun, and yeah, I'm happy that I like got to execute it and we got to film it. Yeah.
Nice. Do you already have some ideas for future music videos?
I actually have an idea for a Rock Creep video where it's like you just find a person that kind of is the Rock Creep in that video, and then just like play out what I say in the song. Like you talk to me at like I see you in bars, you talk to me at shows.
Yeah.
You know, I get into a bar and like they're in a corner being like, you know, or something like that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because like what is your perspective behind that storyline? Because I know it's like, from my perspective, it's honestly a huge topic in DIY culture that doesn't get talked about too much. It kind of gets pushed under the rug of the idea of the rock creep, I feel.
I fully agree. It's like, I think with that song, I kind of made clear where I stood, and I feel that there are places in Berlin that are avoiding me for that reason. But I want to be avoided by them. You know what I mean? Without like actually saying names or something of like certain venues, you know?
Yeah.
Where like there are places that are like Rock Creep Central. You know? And it's like, oh, they don't want me to play there. I don't want to play there, you know? I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, I feel it always comes with a certain backlash, you know, being out there and being like feminist and being radical.
Yeah, definitely. Because just in America too, with the history of a lot of rock bands, like classic rock bands and like different genres like hair metal, there is definitely like a huge problem of sexism in the music industry, and just like that kind of attitude of like the rock and roll icon and following this like rock star lifestyle of like partying and all that comes with it, to where it just becomes like almost like the status quo to a sense of it's just the way it is. So the people who are in positions of power or people at venues or certain bands or even record labels will like blacklist artists that speak out against it, and it makes it to where the scene isn't as safe and or inclusive as it could be in a lot of spaces.
No, I fully agree. You probably heard of Burger Records, right?
Yeah,
That's a good example.
Huge example, yeah, for sure. Because kids nowadays don't even know about Burger Records or that whole like movement, really.
Really? Because it
Yeah.
only happened 4 years ago. I remember it was in the first months of the pandemic where people started speaking up about them.
Yeah.
Maybe also the pandemic caused it, where it's like, hey, we're on a break now. We're not going to see these guys next week at a show. Maybe it's a good time to speak up about what happened.
Of
And it was
course.
so crazy, right? Like how it started with one person saying, hey, this happened to me. And then there were like so many, like, usually, yeah, women actually speaking up and saying that they have either experienced or kind of witnessed abuse in that scene, right?
Yeah, the whole culture itself was just fostering this like toxic music scene, really, where a lot of people were getting taken advantage of, and yeah, just like the whole scene really just crumbled once all those stories and like the truth came to light, and a lot of like people were named and bands were named that aren't part of that scene anymore. And then I think the label itself is still active, but they had to change their name, and they don't. I don't even really know what happened to them too much. That that was like a good example for sure of like the truth coming out and actually something happening about it.
Exactly. I feel it's like there's this understanding of like, if no one speaks up against it, what I'm doing is okay. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why it's important that there are people out there speaking up against them.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, that's why I feel like it's really powerful as a musician and an artist to be able to speak up against things like that and actually like help other people recognize that they're not alone experiencing that, and that they also can have a voice and be a participant in activating other people and just like creating a more safe environment for everyone to be like vulnerable and empathetic with each other.
I agree.
What have been some of your obstacles that you've experienced along the way being like a DIY artist in this internet age?
Some obstacles. Well, it's definitely like sometimes rude promoters. So I don't want to like play lots of shows in Berlin this year, but like what I sometimes find easier is like writing venues on Instagram and be like, hey, could you imagine booking us sometime then and then? And then this one promoter goes like, I don't know you. No, not even I don't know you. I'm like, okay, do you only book bands you know? Lol. Like laughing smiley. And they go like, yes, I only book bands I know, or I work with promoters and concert agencies. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, I don't like that vibe, so I don't think I want to be booked by you. But thank you. All the best, you know?
Yeah, of course.
Like, these are obstacles, like, and I'm sure, like, I don't know who I was talking to, but from, like, the top, like, if I look into my heart, I know this was a man. And the bookings they do is mainly male bands. And I'm like, okay, that's definitely an obstacle there, that there are people kind of perpetuating this idea of, like, the scene is good how it is, we don't want it to change. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Because I see that mindset in like, I don't know you. You know, like, because it's like, if I was a promoter or a booker, I would never say that phrase to anyone. It's like, hey, I don't know you, but I would love to get to know you. Send me like your material, whatsoever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's
So-
like the difference of like being the open arms community of like that DIY spirit versus like some sort of like gatekeeping mentality of like keeping the community the way it is, or
Exactly.
yeah, it's interesting.
yeah.
It's like that out here for sure, definitely at times.
Right?
for
Where you,
certain venues, and just like the way to like cold email venues. There's just so many layers being an independent artist that like you wouldn't really know unless you were like a label or like knew someone like a PR agent to know how to create like a EPK or like how to word an email to like best get a response from a venue promoter or booker. Yeah, it's just interesting because I feel like back in the 80s or like pre-internet, people would just go to venues themselves and meet the venue owner or the promoter or booker themselves and promote the show by like posting flyers around the city themselves.
interesting.
It
Maybe
was-
leaving their tapes or
Yeah.
their records, their vinyls.
yeah,
Mhm.
it was definitely more of like on the street, like physical forms of like communication and interacting with people. That the internet's made it a little bit of an obstacle for at times.
It's true, but I think for so many things it's easier.
Yeah,
Because if I had to come here and like find you or like find any bookers,
totally. Yeah, because
And
how
promoters, yeah.
we probably would have never connected without the internet
Right?
for sure. Those ripples are crazy. Being across the countries, across the world, really.
right? I mean, I honestly see more chances and in being able to use the internet as an artist these days than I see obstacles, to be honest, because
Yeah,
it's so easy to not so easy, like, but it's easier to self-promote and to kind of build up a following by using social media, by posting regularly, you know?
yeah, true.
Like by just reading up a bit on like online marketing, and then you're like, okay, I need to feed the algorithm. It's not fun, you know, no one likes doing it. It's
Yeah.
not that I like doing it, but yeah, I think it's possible, you know, whereas like 10, 15 years ago, without a label, you were screwed,
Yeah, true.
right?
Yeah.
It's like without a label or a hookup to MTV, you know, it's like if you didn't know anyone at MTV or like a label didn't want you, it's like, how did you get your music out? You just didn't.
True, yeah. I definitely just had to be more of like an indie label and like spend years on the road, like carving a little name for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, that accessibility to like get your music heard by like anyone in the world at any moment based on that like algorithm or like feeding the streams, like kind of beautiful for sure. Like it's crazy, those ripple effects and like really being able to like interact with people wherever is like really cool. But at the same time, that like sense of like corporatization with all these social media outlets and like that like need to feed the stream makes it like kind of like hard for a lot of artists to know why they're creating or that sense of purpose. Like it can become like really disheartening, like focusing on numbers or just like seeing other people and like kind of like comparing yourself to other people's numbers or stuff like that, like versus like creating for the creation instead of just creating content and actually like going out and collaborating with people instead of competing.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I feel, yeah, it definitely can be a bit overwhelming at times. And at the end of the day, it's like work, you know, it's like, it's not fun to like, you know, go through photos and be like, what am I going to post next? You know, just because I have to do it on that particular day or whatsoever. I mean, obviously, sometimes there are news that you're really happy to share, but just the thing of it becoming a chore, that's the issue.
Yeah.
You know, when it's like, because for
True.
me, it's like every Sunday. I post once a week on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so every Sunday, like sometimes it's in the evening and I don't feel like doing anything. And it's like, oh no, I have to do that post. So, yeah.
Yeah, so true. And other outlets too, like TikTok, people want you to post like 3 times a day.
Crazy.
And like, or just like, I don't know, there's like make up numbers of like what you think you should be posting every day so people will get caught up in that loop. But then some of the outlets will make you have the opportunity to like calendar stuff out and like actually schedule content. But yeah, it's interesting just all the tools people have nowadays to promote themselves or create whatever they want to create.
Yeah, I think one needs to kind of wrap one's head a bit around it, but it's definitely, I think there are a lot of chances these days that musicians didn't have like 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah, Yeah, I think it's really empowering just being a DIY artist and like being able to take that leap to perform outside of your hometown or even like go to a different country to perform or a different state based on like connections you made on the internet, and then you get to go meet them in person and like create memories together or like experiences, and like I think that's gonna like create like a new sense of like younger artists like creating like a new wave of DIY culture to an extent that is similar to the 80s and like bands of pre-internet era, but we just have more accessibility now. I think it's just people have to get that like drive or like that calling to like follow the internet to where they want to go.
I fully agree.
How would you say your experience has been performing out in Los Angeles or just America so far?
Yeah, so yesterday was the first gig we played here, but people were really receptive for what we did. Like, they seemed really attentive, and, you know, a lot of people came out last night. I'm sure also to see the other amazing bands, but it was so good to play in front of all these enthusiastic faces, you know, like, yeah, it felt really, really good. Like, no one crossed their arms in front of their chest, you know, while watching us. I mean, maybe they did and I didn't see them, you know, but...
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so some friends actually came out, and that also felt really empowering, you know, to like, whenever I looked up, see a friendly face that I love, you know?
Yeah.
That's always a good feeling, to know
yeah,
there
totally.
are people out there who have your back, sort of.
Yeah, that's so cool. Do you have any plans for other shows after the March 6th one?
Not yet, but I'm thinking about maybe setting up a show with Quinn.
Nice.
So if you'd be down, we could set up a show for the 3 bands or something, like for the 3 of us.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Like for your band as well.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
Quinn's band and like Rose Rage.
Oh, yeah, that'd be rad. Maybe get teen models too.
Yeah, maybe get teen models too.
So after your trip to here in California, what are your plans for the rest of the year?
My plans for the rest of the year are to play very few selected shows in Berlin and focus on writing and recording an album. I hope I can record it by summer, but I also know myself, you know, I'm kind of like, I like to take my time for things. So it might also be fall. I'm also trying to not like put pressure on myself regarding this.
Of course.
You know, to not like find a release date or something crazy like that, you know?
Yeah.
Because I feel, you know, even though it's kind of weird to say that about punk or grunge music, I think that I'm very critical with my lyrics. I told you I'm a writer. So I think, you know, I would never want to put out a song where I'm not 100% comfortable or happy with the lyrics. And I feel that's usually what takes me the longest. To find like good lyrics that I'm really, really happy with, you know, so.
Of course. What kind of themes are your lyrics going to be focusing or centering around for this new EP or debut project?
So I think it's definitely still gonna, you know, it's gonna be like a lot of feminist songs, or like, let's put it this way, like songs with feminist topics. You know, a lot of songs I write are also really political, but I wonder if I really want to get a visa for the US, if that makes sense, to be like super out there and kind of position myself very left. You know, I've applied for fundings maybe once or twice, and it's a lot of work. It like takes 4 to 12 hours to fill out these funding forms because they want you to write a lot about yourself. You need to gather a lot of documents before sending in funding applications. So this was a bit disheartening because like I spent quite some time on that, and then I realized, okay, it's probably better to just continue without funding because it gives me more freedom.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I have been dismissed for dropping the F-bomb too often, you know, in songs, or, you know, maybe being too out there politically. And I actually don't like the idea of restricting myself because I, like you said, you know, like as an artist, one should always have the freedom of expression.
Yeah, I think just like the whole spirit of the punk scene too in the 80s, like a lot of labels and venues wouldn't want to work with them because of similar reasons where they were like cussing or like speaking out against corruption in a way that venue owners and labels didn't think was suitable for like selling a record.
Right?
But nowadays, I think with the internet, like we were talking about earlier, it really does make it to where you can have that freedom of expression and have access to it easier.
It's true, actually. I agree.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything else you're excited about, looking forward for the rest of the year?
Maybe filling out these 10,000 of pages of like the visa application to hopefully live here one day.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not so fond of the entire process, but I'm actually looking forward to that. I'm happy that I took that decision to say like, okay, I need to release my album, and then this will be kind of the next step.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so these are two things that I'm really looking forward to this year,
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had this thought the other day that I'm like, okay, I'm here right now and I'm having this amazing time and the year has only started. It's like, how can I top that? Like how can I make sure that the year continues to be like super nice and
True. Yeah.
to kind
it's
of like,
exciting.
It's true. It's good to set up goals for oneself.
And like you were saying earlier too about when you were creating DIY shows and having to like kind of prove to yourself that you can do something, or like when you created your music video, being able to travel and create experiences where you have that like idea of like how can I keep this going or the momentum going.
Exactly.
It's super exciting because it's like you have that like power of whatever decision you're making, however you're acting on those decisions is like creating the reality you want to live.
Exactly. You're kind of like the master of your own future, It sounds a bit like almost cliche to say something like that, but I really believe it.
Yeah, totally, yeah. Like we're always like writing our own stories every day.
Exactly.
Whether or not we're like fully aware of it.
It's very true. And I also believe that if you want something really bad and not just like try to manifesting it by wanting it, but also are willing to put hard work in, I think at some point people will see the passion you have for something, and this will, get you to meet other people who are passionate about what they're doing.
Of course.
And just that is like so enriching, I feel,
Yeah, it's those ripple effects for sure.
Exactly, like you said before, these ripple effects. Yeah.
That's so cool. On that same vein, appreciate you for taking the time today to be able to chat and like share your perspective on your journey as an artist and with Rose Rage. What would you say to fans out there or people who are just starting their own bands as like some sort of like memento or advice?
Okay, yeah, first of all, like I appreciate you taking the time as well. Thanks so much for, making time for me and inviting me over so I can come here and we can have this interview together. So the message that I would want to give fans is like, life is tough, but there's always something beautiful out there. So if you feel like you're really down and you think about ending things, don't do it, because around the corner there's something waiting for you. You just have to be patient. And I think that's an issue in our times, that people aren't so patient.
Real.
And I think it's important to be patient, see how things develop. And also I'd be very happy if people who like our music feel empowered to also start playing music or doing something creative, or something that they love doing, that they maybe have always thought of, but never really got around to doing. So I think it's about empowering other people and fans mainly.
Yeah, totally. Everyone can participate.
Exactly, everyone can do it. You just have to want it and start basically doing it.